just love to do that, you know. I don't like to do anything else really. You know, the stuff that normal people do is bullshit to me. So
So
then,
then,
that was a very depressing year. But that spring,
excuse me while I inhale. That spring.
I talked to my parents, and they decided that to send me to college, college if I can get into college somewhere. And again, the only thing I was interested in is something relating to the arts, like music or film or literature. My main interest was music, but at the time, for some reason, I was real fascinated with film. And my basic choices were to go to Berklee College of Music in Boston to study music, or to go to Ithaca College in New York to study film and theater arts. Now, I submitted an application to Ithaca, and they said in order to be eligible for the theater arts program, I first had to take a year of English or be in some other, just general liberal arts program. And during the time that I went up to visit these two schools, I was very depressed. So I went to Boston first and visited Berklee, and I was so depressed and just out of the whole state of the time and what I was doing and my life situation at the time, that I didn't even want to bother to drive to New York to take a look at Ithaca. And I rationalized it later by saying, well, I want to study how to learn to either make music or make films. And to make a film, you need funding and tons of money from somebody. You need the cooperation of, huge numbers of people. Usually, I mean, you can work with a small film crew, but to make more interesting movies, usually you need a larger budget and larger film crew. And my experience in working with collectives and working with other people and living in a family have been unfortunate, because I find that I'm most happy when I'm making all my own decisions and not relying on anybody, not depending on anybody, and not having anybody around me telling me what to do. And in the movie, it seems like you're always working in a collective of some sort, of someone always subverting your own ideas. And in music, you can create music by yourself. You can create it by playing an instrument, or you can be a composer, and compose by yourself. Again, the realization and the performance of it with other musicians relies upon a collective effort. But in the pure creative process of either playing an instrument or composing a piece of music or arranging, you are the one making all the decisions, and you don't need a team there to do it. You just I thought about the future, and that in the future, in order to make a film, you need some sort of resources. You need equipment and you need money. To make music, you just need your goddamn instrument, or to be a composer, all you need is music, paper, and some, pencil.
Right.
And so, I didn't want to make any assumptions about having access to anything when I got out of school, because I never had access.
You're a firm believer in cheapness.
I'm a firm believer in not planning for anything outside my own grasp, and it seems to get lots of resources such as money or equipment or other things. You have to ask people for favors, and I don't like to ask people for favors, because when I was growing up, whenever I asked for favors, I was usually told no, and I hated that. I hate being told no when I want to get something. And in order to overcome that, you learn to stop wanting things so badly, or you learn to get the things that you need without having to ask anybody else, to not have to go through the humiliation of being rejected for the things that you need to get done. So yeah, if I can't get something now myself for my own life, I just do without, because I will not put up with the humiliation of rejection and not getting the things I need from people that are usually inferior to me, either morally or spiritually or intellectually. I cannot put up with rejection from my inferiors. I will not tolerate it. I've got too many important things to get done with my life to be, stuck in a quagmire of shit from idiots. Those sound like pretty harsh words, but the only way for you to really understand it is to trade places with me, and nobody will ever do that, and nobody's able to. I can live my own life only. I must sound like a real fucked up maniac, to some people. Just like a terrible person and a criminal and so forth. But another thing is I'm extremely serious about doing certain things, strongly opinionated. And most people don't have strong opinions, and most people don't, have things that they want to get done. They just float around like jellyfish, not doing anything. And then when they die, when they're on their deathbed, they say, "Oh, give me a second chance. I haven't done it right," or "There's so many things I wanted to do," or "I want to do this and that." You had your chance, sucker, but you were just a fucking jellyfish. You just followed what everybody else wanted you to do. You spineless hunk of shit. You worthless human being. You vile, vain motherfucker. I'd like to kill you. I'd like to stomp on your head and squish your eyeballs out and knock you down and jump on top of you until your guts squish out your mouth. Then I'd have an orgasm. So what's the next question?
I don't think I asked one yet, but how you do go on. Mike, you were going to tell me what happened to Berkeley, at Berkeley. So Berkeley took up how many years of your life?
It took 3 years. Basically, it's a 4-year school. You can take a 2-year program. And I studied music in general. I am not a great schooled musician. I wasn't a piano prodigy. I was never a very good sight reader. But it was my chance to go to college, and whenever I begin something or set my mind to do something, I usually finish it and complete it and see it till it's done. And I knew I wasn't going to get a chance to go to college if I dropped out, so I just went with it. And I don't know if I have any inborn musical talent. I just had a real strong interest in music and was fascinated with it and wanted to learn how it was made, how you create it. I used to listen to those Beatle records, say, well, how do they have those instruments play, those chords against that other instrument, and how do they record that? And basically, there's a fascination with it, almost like an academic fascination with the records and record production and arranging and composing, rather than, having great musical skill. And I just loved listening to music. I thought it would be fun to create some of my own. So I went there to learn the skills how to do that. And in some courses I did fairly well, in other courses I didn't do so well. And a lot of the things there are extremely difficult and extremely tough, unless you have a natural musical ability. Ear training I found difficult. A lot of people do, a lot of musicians do even. And so forth, but I forced myself to do all that stuff because I wanted to learn.
And you stayed summers, and it took you 3 years instead of 4, and you graduated.
3 years, yeah. So I went there. Last 2 years I went there year round. I took summer courses, and I was living with a woman named Robin Lee. It was my first girlfriend, and I.
In other words, you were a virgin until that time.
Yeah, right. Getting into my personal life, right. And about a week after I met her, we started living together because she was divorcee and she had troubles meeting the rent. She didn't have a huge income, and I was a student looking to get out of the dorms because the dorms at Berkeley sucked. And so it was great living with her for a while, but then it got into typical. We weren't married, we were just living together, but it got into a typical husband-wife situation where she'd get bitchy, and I didn't want to be around her and wanted to concentrate on my studies and all that sort of stuff. So I can see how married people drive each other crazy, and I didn't even have to get married in order to do that, so that was great. But it was helpful living with her and being with her for a while.
And so Boston overall was a positive experience, or
Boston overall was a positive experience.
Learning experience.
Yeah, a lot of students there, a lot of colleges, a lot of excitement. Not much money because the students are all broke. A lot of jazz clubs. I noticed that there are an awful lot of jazz in Boston. Jazz clubs and guys playing saxophone and crap.
Not really anymore, but...
Well, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, so then what happened?
So we're up to 1979. Jesus.
Okay.
This is the prolonged history of John Van Zelm
I
Trubee.
came home for about a month. Then I went back up to Boston to visit Robin briefly, and then started going cross country with all my personal belongings packed in this Chevy sedan that my dad gave me. That is sort of on its last legs. I didn't know that at the time. All my records, my stereo, my guitar, books, everything was crammed in the car, and anything that I couldn't put in there I was going to have sent to me. It was a big deal for like a young person to go totally across the country and go to a new place and get out of the parents' home, and I was desperate to do that. And I noticed the car was acting sort of funny. I tried to start it in the mornings, and I put it into gear, and nothing would happen. And then a little while later, it would go into gear. And it bothered me a little bit, but I was going to wait till I got to Denver, Colorado, to have an uncle. I don't see how this is relevant to me.
Neither do I, but...
Anyway, my car broke down in Montgomery, near Montgomery City, Missouri. I was stuck there for a week. Finally got out to Colorado, then finally got out to LA. Stayed here for about 3 weeks in '79, and then freaked out, didn't know what I was going to do. My car had to get insurance, and I didn't know where I was going to get money coming in. And basically, I didn't know how to live in a big city on my own, thinking that I'd die with all these rules and regulations about my car and insurance and about smog. And I think part of it, too, is I missed Robin back in Boston. What a chump I was. Stupid. And so, yeah, I was out here for about 2 weeks, and I wimped out and went back, which was a mistake. And before I went back, or even when I was floundering around out here, my dad told the rest of the family, well, he'll be back. He'll just scoop up out there, and he'll be back. And of course,
Sure
enough, I ended up back there. And I've always resented that sort of attitude, like, he'll always fail and he'll always fuck up and he'll do bad things and stuff.
And you should see how Johnny lives.
Yeah, that's right. And it's that sort of attitude from him and from other people that are always underestimating me and undercutting me that makes me want to succeed in various things in order to take the dog shit and rub it in their faces and say, fuck you, you assholes. So basically, that's my attitude. Yeah, without support from people deliberately backstabbing me when I'm trying to do the best I can under bad circumstances, I want to succeed and take the dog shit in their faces, and rub it in their faces and say, fuck you, because I have a lot of people, some people that are supposed to be supportive of me, actually, I find it hard to trust people, because these people that supposedly supposed to be supporting me, just many backstabber motherfuckers. I'm an evil person. That sounds so evil, mean, and bitter. Please kill me. Please come kill me.
I don't see you as being evil, mean, and bitter only because I've been hearing this rant for 15, 20 years. Yeah. So what the fuck? This is Trubee.
Yeah, right, okay.
Is it not?
Yeah, so anyway, I went
Pure
back.
Trubee.
Yeah, so I went back, lived with my parents, spent a couple months dressed like a businessman going through New York City looking for music-related work, and actually almost had it a couple times. I got a job offer at Polygram Records that I didn't follow up on because I was not too swift, and I was socially retarded and couldn't pick up on body language and various things, and I whipped out on that. And then finally got a job at a cable TV company in Plainsboro, New Jersey, and did that during the summer, saved up money, and headed back out to Los Angeles and lived with Richard Hass, who was in Zoogs Riff's band on and off for years. And we shared an apartment in North Hollywood. I slept on a Naugahyde couch in the living room. There's a living room and a kitchen and Richie's bedroom, and I slept on the sofa or a couch or whatever you call it for about 6 months. I started working at Producers Film Center. This was in 1980.
And at this point, did you start trying to get together a band?
No, I couldn't really do anything musical at the time because I was just trying to get established as far as making some money and paying rent and things of that nature. Zoogs Riff came back in March of 1981. He was living up in Oregon at the time, and we started playing in Zoogs' band called Zoogs Riff and his Amazing Shitheads. And John Sharkey lived in North Hollywood, and Rich Hass lived in North Hollywood until Zoogs came back, and then he started living with Zoogs, and so I'd go to work, and then in the evenings, John Sharkey and I would drive 16 miles across the valley to rehearsals in Zoogs' house in Woodland Hills, and we'd do this 3 or 4 nights a week, which is very taxing, but when you're young and have a lot of energy, it was worth it, and it was fun to do. And we started playing out clubs in LA for a while.
Were you one of the founding members of Zoogs Riff and his Amazing Shitheads? You were one of the original Amazing Shitheads.
That is right. That is correct.
Yes, and you played on his first album, Idiots on the Miniature Golf Course.
But that was actually Zoogs Riff's Micro Mastodons, which actually was consisted of some demo tapes that he put together, plus some additional recording he did up in that studio near Oakland, wherever the hell.
So in other words, that was the name of the band before he thought of...
Mastodons, and it wasn't even a band, it was just him and Richie living up in his apartment.
And you're on a lot of these cuts, are you not?
That is correct.
You're playing guitar throughout.
Yeah. Guitar work I'm not too proud of. It's just, the stuff wasn't that well recorded and everything.
Right. Okay, a little break. And then we'll get back to the meat and potatoes of the John Trubee experience. Thank you. All right, we're on again.
Okay.
Oh, by the way, what do you think about mucus?
Mucus is a delightful substance. Mucus is the elixir of life. Music is
Ah, you get them confused.
Mucus is a randy kind of unit. Mucus has been redulcified.
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Now, okay, at this point, you have something to show us, don't you?
Yeah. Women out there, send your sexy nude photos, plus your phone number and your address and your name to this address.
John Trubee, 11438 Killian Street, number...
K-I-L-L-I-O-N Street, number 4, North Hollywood, California, 91601, USA. Send nude photos of yourself. Send send your name and address and telephone number, because what I'm doing is starting the Ugly Janitor's Harem membership drive. We need various information in our files. In fact, I was thinking of doing that on some tape or something. The Ugly Janitors of American Harem. Is it
Harem?
Harem membership drive fund organization. And
you're liable to scare them.
Yeah, Harem's gonna. No, send them. I encourage you. You know, whatever.
Okay, fabulous. Now, getting back to our interview.
And everybody else, send money to that address.
Send money.
Yeah.
Okay. We're speaking to John Trubee, and he's going to tell us more about the history of his essence, his being. Mm-hmm. And we just broke off at the point where he had come to California. He had joined up with Zoog's Rift, played on their first album with the Micro Mastodons, and then what happened? Did you go on from there?
Yeah, I recorded with Micro Mastodons when I first came out to LA in '79. I stopped for about a week up in Moraga, which is near San Francisco. It's outside San Francisco, sort of inland a little bit. That's where they recorded some tracks for Idiots on the Miniature Golf Course, and I slept on Zoog's floor up there. And he flew in Jim Simcoe from LA, the sax player. And then I came down here. All right. So I was in Zoog's band for a couple of years. I had a crappy job at Producers Film Center in Hollywood, which is a film vault. And I was paid about $5 an hour to log film and put it up on the shelves. And they also had a bunch of films that they cleaned for television syndication, 16mm films of Mr. Ed and the Addams Family and the Lone Ranger that they'd send throughout the world to various TV stations, and it was my job to clean those films. And I used a solution called methyl chloroform, a liquid that the film ran through. And I did some reading and some research on chloroform and what it did and what I could find out about it. Not much research, but I ran across some carcinogenic lists of carcinogens. I don't
Your
know
amp is making noises, you know that.
Yeah, okay, I'll shut it off.
All right, so you were talking about Zoog's kicked you out.
Zoog's kicked me out of his band in 1982.
Why?
Why? Because I refused to give money to him for any things like flyers or electricity, paying for electric bills, paying for phone bills on behalf of the band, because I felt it wasn't my responsibility to put my cash into a band run by somebody else. I figured it was his responsibility. So I refused, and he kicked me out of the band. We didn't talk for about 6 months or so. And I still, I stand by my decision.
Right. And
And
you went off, and you must have started
I
something.
forgot when I started playing with Dead of Nature, DEBT of Nature. It's a industrial noise band run by a guy named Brad Lane, who's a very precocious, intelligent. At the time, he was a teenager. He's probably in his early 20s now. A kid living in the Valley, Sepulveda, and he was very influenced by the music of Yoko Ono and John Cage and industrial music from San Francisco and so forth. And I just performed as a band from the hell of it. But I think that was actually '82. In late '83, the events occurred which led to putting out Blind Man's Penis, which was a novelty song which I wrote when I was 19 in 1976. And a tape of it was made, and in late '82, Craig Leon, a record producer, heard it through Ron Stringer of the Fibonacci's, and they invited me to come master the tape so they could put it out as a single, and I said fine. And as a result of Blind Man's Penis and a little notoriety I got through local press, I decided to put together a band to, take advantage of some of the interest in the record and so forth. And I got a band together called Van Zelm and the Geeks. Van Zelm is my middle name. And we had one performance in February at the Anti-Club of '83. And then we had a performance in March of '83. And this performance in March of '83, nobody showed up to. We didn't even have a rehearsal for it. I just called some musicians together, and we just were goofing around, which was dumb on my part. But I didn't have any money to rehearse the band because I was making about $5 an hour. So anyway, during the sound check for this particular gig in March of '83, Danny Buchanan and I were slam dancing, or just like rolling around the floor at the Anti-Club in front of the stage. I was smashing into the walls and jumping around, doing very violent somersaults and so forth. And I have a dislocated shoulder. I've dislocated my shoulder a number of times. And once you dislocate a limb, or not a limb, a joint, it will permanently go out on you under certain circumstances because the cartilage is permanently torn. So in the ball socket of my shoulder joint here, the cartilage is permanently torn, and if I wrench my arm back violently and put it out like that, in some sort of violent thing, usually in water, like water skiing or in the ocean, jumping to a wave the wrong way, I can put my shoulder out, as I've done before. And this time at the Anti-Club, by flopping around on the floor violently, I put my shoulder out, and I had to be driven to the emergency room at Queen of Angels Hospital in Los Angeles, and they gave me some Librium. It was the only time I've ever had a sedative like that, and it felt great. They gave me some muscle relaxant, and I can see how people become drug addicts and use drugs because it felt great. It was wonderful. It was relaxing. It was Librium or something. They gave me something to relax my muscle. I was just floating. But that was the only time I've ever used a drug like that.
This incident, when you dislocated your shoulder on stage, that was when you were with, or the leader of Van Zelm and the Geeks?
Van Zelm and the Geeks, right. And as I was leaving, my tape recorder was taping off the board this whole performance, and I instructed my musicians, even though there was no audience there, and there was no leader of the band there, I said, just keep on playing for as long as you can and get some interesting stuff on tape. So I have a copy of that tape of these guys goofing around without me, and I left a folder of my poetry there, and one of my keyboard players, Ofer Schur, just picked up some of the poetry and started reading the shit, like, fuck the community, there's this horrible music in the background, and Chris Wall of the Flesh Eaters was playing drums that night. We had two bass players, and I think John Sharkey was there. It was just a mess. It was a horrible mess, and it sounds great on tape. It's just total moronic idiocy. And I'm glad I have that tape, and I'm glad I told whenever you set up a thing, any situation like that, get the stuff on tape, get something interesting happening, even if the leader can't be there, even if there's no audience there, make something, make something with that time, and make something with those resources, because you're going to die soon, you got to make something interesting with that shit. So I have this great, this tape, it's real fun to listen to, it's interesting, to me it's provocative, and just sort of neat thing to have, that's all. you know, for these people that don't care, and for an audience which was non-existent. You know, fuck them. So anyhow, that laid me up for a while because I had this, had the sling on, and I didn't know what to do. And during that period, Blind Man's Penis was out, and it was getting, a little airplay. But I still wanted to make records, and at the time, I think I was writing poetry, and I was submitting it to various publishers, and I either got rejection notices or there's no response. And
maybe you could recite one of your poems right now for us.
the only one I can do is Natalie Wood, and I'm so sick of that I don't even want to think about it.
Well, do it in a different voice, perhaps.
I don't want to be a clown.
All right, you don't want to be a
clown.
Oh, get out! You're not sick of playing the clown. Just don't feel like doing it right now.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, you won't play the clown for us tomorrow night?
Well, it's Friday night. I'm tired.
All right.
God,
I could do it.
Look at this map of the world. You see what happens? These silverfish come over a little edge here and take little bites out of the paper, and there's these little holes in the top. Is this a Mercator projection they call these? Mercator? I forget, but I have Mercator projection of the map of the world, and there's little holes at the top because these little silverfish crawl at the top and eat it. It's great. It looks horrible. Wonder what other paper stuff they've eaten in my apartment. Like they'd smash them.
Hey.
I catch them crawling around the walls and I smash them with my hands.
I don't even know what silverfish look like.
Oh, they're horrible. I mean, they're just these ugly little silver gray things that crawl around and eat paper. They're probably eating my books and stuff.
Right. Eating your charts.
So what else do you want to know?